Jamie Raskin just made the biggest mistake of his political career. He was called out live on air. A classified document exposed before millions of viewers. A catastrophic error. Karoline Leavitt hit back relentlessly. Jamie Raskin, explain the $50,000 check and the funds flowing into your account during the exact period when evidence disappeared. What happens next will shock Washington. Hit the like button because you're about to witness a brutal, no-holds-barred political showdown. A former close aide now testifies under oath, revealing secrets that will leave you stunned. Raskin was confident, thinking he was untouchable. He was wrong. When you wield power to bend the truth, you must be ready for the consequences. This isn't just a scandal. It could reshape how Congress operates. This is the day a routine hearing turned into a nationally televised trial. You won't want to miss the moment everything unravels under the spotlight. Hit the like button, because you're about to see the most dramatic collapse in modern Washington history. The congressional hearing room was packed that morning, camera lights panning across tense faces, with millions of viewers watching live, expecting just another drawn-out hearing with familiar questions. But from the very first second, the atmosphere exploded when Karoline Leavitt suddenly stood up, not waiting for her turn, ignoring protocol, her voice ringing clear, booming into the microphone and echoing through the room. Do you deny signing this document? The room froze for a few seconds. Jamie Raskin, sitting calmly with a neat stack of files in front of him, looked up, his eyes betraying a flicker of surprise. He hadn't expected such a direct attack, especially from someone as young as Leavitt. In that moment, the confidence of a Harvard law scholar, a veteran congressman, a Democratic intellectual star, was openly challenged on national television, where every gesture, every breath was magnified. The stakes couldn't be higher. Raskin wasn't just a congressman, he was a symbol of legal integrity, a leader in major congressional debates, a heavyweight voice on the January 6th committee, his political reputation reaching nationwide and even internationally. A misstep today wouldn't just be a reprimand, it could be a fatal blow to his career, to the image of a constitutional guardian he'd built over decades. Facing him, Karoline Leavitt, with her bright blonde hair and eyes sharp as knives, showed no fear, instead leveraging her youth and boldness to seize the initiative. She knew she was no longer just a former spokesperson or a failed candidate. She held evidence that could topple an icon. The whispers in the room stopped. All eyes turned to the opposing table. And in that first moment, as Raskin scrambled for a response, the audience knew this wouldn't be an ordinary hearing, but a live broadcast political battle, where a single document could determine a person's fate and even shake an entire party. The tension hadn't even settled from the initial shock, when Karoline Leavitt took it further, pulling out a thin but tightly clipped file, the white paper with bold red confidential text flashing before the cameras. She held up the first page for all to see, then read slowly, emphasizing each word. Internal memo, January 6th committee, select only evidence unfavorable to Republicans. The words detonated in the room like a bomb, sparking a frenzy of typing from reporters, wide-eyed stares from opposing congressmen, and a wave of murmurs flooding the back rows. Jamie Raskin, until then maintaining the composure of a constitutional professor, suddenly stood up, his voice sharper than usual. This is a forged document. It's not part of the committee's official records. He tried to dismiss it as he had in past debates, where his reputation and legal expertise always crushed accusations. But Leavitt gave him no room, stepping forward, her gaze locked on her opponent. Then whose signature is at the bottom of this page, Mr. Raskin? The question cut like an arrow through every defense, because at the bottom right of the memo was a slanted, familiar signature, one that had appeared on thousands of Raskin's public documents. The room reeled. A few Democratic congressmen nearby whispered urgently, while some Republican senators leaned back, barely hiding smirks. Cameras zoomed in on Raskin's face. A flush of red, a moment's hesitation, his hand adjusting his black-rimmed glasses, a small gesture that betrayed his unease. The man known for his eloquence, who could stand for hours delivering speeches laced with classic quotes, was now cornered on live TV by a young political figure. Leavitt seized the moment, her voice steady and cold. The American people are watching live. They deserve your answer, not empty denials. If this is a forgery, point out where. If not, admit you signed an internal directive for political bias. The air grew thick, as if everyone held their breath. Raskin opened his mouth, ready to counter with complex legal arguments. But even he knew words couldn't erase the clear image of his signature broadcast nationwide. He stammered, I need to see the original. It could be manipulated. It could be fabricated. Leavitt cut him off instantly. We had the signature analyzed, and it matches yours in congressional records, with 98% certainty. Would you like me to present the forensic report to the audience? A sharp twist elicited a prolonged ooh from the room. The first blow had struck Raskin's authority. And for the first time that morning, he no longer seemed the master of the situation, but a man under fire, his eyes searching for an anchor. Behind him, reporters whispered, "This is seismic. If he can't recover, Raskin's headed for a spiral he can't escape." Leavitt stood still, letting the silence amplify the weight of her evidence, then delivered one more line, calm but razor-sharp. "I have more documents. But first, tell the American people, is this your signature? Or are you asking the nation to believe someone forged your name on congressional papers?" The room was still reeling from the memo and its disputed signature when Karoline Leavitt pulled out a thicker stack of papers, carefully clipped together, and slammed it down on the polished wooden table. The sound echoed, startling several people to look up. Her voice rang clear and steady. "If Mr. Raskin thinks one signature isn't enough, let me present a series of internal emails among his closest aides." She looked up, her eyes sweeping the rows of congressmen and reporters, then read aloud, "We must protect certain Democrats at all costs. If evidence unfavorable to them surfaces, find a way to remove it from the official record." The room's sound seemed to vanish, leaving only the relentless clicking of reporters' keyboards. Jamie Raskin gripped his chair's armrests, his face straining to stay calm, but his lips twitched slightly. He took a deep breath, then stood, his voice high but striving for reason. "These are just internal staff discussions, never implemented in practice. Such conversations happen in every office. They don't reflect my official directives." Leavitt didn't rush to respond, locking eyes with him for a beat before replying, her words like a cold blade. "If they're just harmless discussions, why did critical evidence suddenly vanish right after these exchanges?" The American people watching want a clear explanation, not evasion. A few Democrats behind Raskin began to grimace, whispering among themselves. Cameras zoomed in on the screen. Leavitt had raised the email header, clearly showed sender, recipient, and crucially, the timestamp. That's when she pressed harder. "Ladies and gentlemen, note the timestamp on these emails. It matches exactly with the date when certain evidence documents inexplicably vanished from the committee's archive. Just a coincidence." The room erupted. A few reporters gasped, "Oh my God," and typed frantically. Raskin's face flushed red. He raised his hand, signaling to speak. "There's no proof the missing documents are tied to those emails. Our systems have had technical issues before. This is a coincidence, not a conspiracy." Leavitt cut in, her voice commanding, pinning her opponent to the wall. "If it's just a technical glitch, why were your staff discussing removing unfavorable evidence right before? And why, oddly, did that evidence disappear at the exact moment?" The audience began to murmur, chairs shifted, and there were stifled laughs mixed with indignation. This was no longer the solemn atmosphere of a typical hearing, but a public trial unfolding on live TV. Raskin shook his head repeatedly, waving his hand as if to dispel the accusations. "You're crafting a false narrative. Internal emails have no legal weight. We never acted that way." Leavitt tilted her head, her lips curling slightly. "You can deny the emails, but servers don't lie. The metadata archives we have show the sender, recipient, and exact timing. There's no speculation here. It's digital evidence, and you know it's nearly impossible to fake." Raskin froze, his eyes widening, then quickly dropping. He removed his glasses, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, a subconscious act revealing the stress he tried to hide. A few committee members tried to shift the topic by tapping their mics to speak, but the chair banged the gavel, demanding order and yielding the floor back to Leavitt. She looked straight at Raskin, not letting him catch his breath. "The American people don't want excuses about technical glitches. They want the truth. And the truth is here. Your team's emails align, minute by minute, with the mysterious disappearance of evidence. If you still claim it's a coincidence, swear right here that you never ordered or condoned this cover-up." Her final words landed like a hammer, and in the tense silence enveloping the room, Raskin's face stiffened. He opened his mouth, but the sound caught in his throat. Leavitt had seized full control, while millions watching saw Jamie Raskin, for the first time, without a sharp response. The atmosphere in the hearing room was thick, taut like a guitar string ready to snap. All eyes from the audience, reporters, and even silent congressmen focused on the table where Karoline Leavitt stood. She took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment to play her next ace. Without raising her voice or dramatizing, she let the evidence speak for itself. "Mr. Chairman, members of the committee," Leavitt said clearly, each word resonating through the microphone, "I request to read a sworn statement from an unexpected witness, someone who worked directly under Mr. Jamie Raskin." The The brief introduction was enough to shake the room. Cameras swiveled to Raskin, his eyes flashing with caution, his fingers tapping the table as if to steady himself. Leavitt held up the printed sheet, her eyes fixed on the text. I was instructed to delete data from the committee's server, including folders related to witnesses and evidence that didn't align with the investigation's direction. But I secretly kept a copy because I believed the truth couldn't be buried. The statement landed, and the room exploded. A wave of murmurs swept through. Reporters jumped up, typing furiously, some raising phones to capture the moment. In the Republican rows, someone smirked, while a few Democrats went pale, visibly shaken. Jamie Raskin couldn't stay seated. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly, his voice booming through the mic, higher than usual. This is a fabrication. This never happened. An anonymous, unverified statement has no value here. You're undermining the credibility of one of the most critical investigations in recent history. His voice was loud, but instead of intimidating his opponent, it only added to the chaos. People whispered, some shouted, "Let her finish." The committee chair banged the gavel repeatedly, demanding order. Leavitt didn't miss a beat. She looked at Raskin, her lips curling into a slight, confident smile, not arrogant, but certain of her upper hand. Raskin claims this is a fabrication, she said, slowly reaching into a leather bag beside her. Then explain this. The room held its breath. From the bag she pulled out a small black USB drive, holding it up to the studio lights for the cameras to catch. In this USB, she continued, her voice sharp as a blade, is the entire folder the sworn witness preserved. This data matches the folders deleted from the committee's server. Not only that, the system logs clearly show the admin account used to delete. The data came from Mr. Raskin's office. At the exact date and time the email discussing removing evidence was sent. The room exploded. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. Reporters gasped. Congressmen leaned back, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The chair banged the gavel again, but even he furrowed his brow, looking at Raskin, clearly expecting a convincing explanation. Raskin rushed to the mic, his hands trembling on the table. This could be manipulated or stolen from outside. Anyone can create a USB and load fake data onto it. We can't take an unknown device and treat it as absolute truth. This is a congressional hearing, not a street court. Leavitt tilted her head, her eyes blazing, responding in a calm tone. You're right. This isn't a street court. This is the United States Congress, where the American people trust that justice and truth will be upheld. I'm ready to submit this USB to an independent forensic agency. If it's truly fake, you'll be vindicated. But if the data is verified as real, how will you answer to the millions watching live? A resounding ooh echoed through the room like a wave. Raskin stood still, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. His eyes no longer meeting Leavitt's, but fixed on the polished wooden table. The cameras captured it all, and on millions of screens across America, the image of Jamie Raskin looking down, silent, became a symbol of a shifting battle. Leavitt slowly placed the USB on the table, her fingers tapping it 3 times, the crisp sound reverberating in the silence. She lowered her voice, but the mic amplified it across the room. Mr. Raskin, I'm not asking about your career. I'm not asking about the reputation you've built. I'm only asking, do you deny that data was deleted at the exact date and time matching your staff's emails about removing evidence? Do you deny that the admin account used to delete that data logged in from your office? The silence that followed was suffocating. Raskin's lips tightened, his hands clasped so hard they turned white, but no rebuttal came. That silence spoke louder than any shout, like an admission without words. The audience in the room, and those watching on screens, all felt it. The tide had begun to turn. Leavitt didn't need to yell or dramatize. She sat there, her gaze locked on her opponent, letting the evidence speak. And in that moment, millions of Americans saw clearly the unprecedented unease of Jamie Raskin, a sign that the power he once held was slipping away. The room's lights focused on the large screen as Karoline Leavitt signaled the technician to display the USB's contents. A series of folders and files appeared, complete with system logs showing deletion times and user logins. All eyes locked onto the screen as she opened a specific document, black text on a white background. Witness analysis report, information favorable to former President Donald Trump. The room fell silent, the air so thick you could hear the audience's sharp breaths. Leavitt, slow and steady, her voice like steel. Members of the committee, this is one of the documents deleted from the server. It clearly shows Mr. Raskin and his team knew about evidence favorable to the former president, but excluded it from the final report. Please note the command note at the bottom. Discussed with JR, decision not to use. Jamie Raskin jumped up, eyes wide, his voice urgent. No. There's no confirmation I gave that order. This could be staff speculation, not my official directive. You can't use a vague note to accuse a member of Congress. He turned to his colleagues behind him, seeking support, but met only awkward glances. Leavitt didn't let him regain ground. She stepped toward the screen, clicking to the next page with a remote. An email appeared. The sender clearly listed jaraskin@house.gov. Subject, re-witness document handling proposal. The message was brief. Don't let this leak. We must stay focused. At the bottom was Jamie Raskin's electronic signature, matching all his previous official emails. Leavitt turned, staring directly at her opponent, her voice cutting. You say there's no confirmation you gave the order. How do you explain this email sent from your own account? A shockwave rippled through the room. Several congressmen sat up straight. Some gasped audibly. Reporters scrambled to screenshot, keyboards clacking furiously. No one could deny the text on the screen. It was Raskin's official account. He stood frozen, his face flushed, shaking his head rapidly. That email, it could have been forged. My account might have been hacked. I never gave such an order. Leavitt tilted her head, a half smile forming. If it was forged, why no report from your office about a hacked account? No warning, no request for a cybersecurity investigation from Congress. Are you telling the American people your account was compromised, and you had no idea? The question was a piercing dagger. Raskin faltered, his voice breaking. I don't recall. I can't monitor every email daily. He tried to sit, bowing his head, hands trembling as he adjusted his glasses. But the cameras caught every detail. The usual composure was gone, replaced by the rattled demeanor of a man backed into a corner. Leavitt didn't relent. She clicked the remote, moving to the next image. System logs showing the email was sent from a computer in Raskin's office, at a time he was present at the Capitol. Mr. Raskin, she said, her words like hammer strikes. This isn't a forgery. This is digital evidence, showing you directly ordered the suppression of evidence favorable to the opposing side. The American people watching want your answer, not deflections. The room fell silent. That silence was fiercer than any shout, exposing a truth everyone quietly acknowledged. The evidence was overwhelming. Raskin opened his mouth to rebut, then closed it, as if realizing every word now would only deepen his predicament. Leavitt lowered her hand, sitting slowly, her eyes never leaving her opponent. You can keep denying, she said, her voice low but amplified by the mic across the room. But the text on the screen, the email address, the electronic signature, the server logs, all point to one thing. You knew, and you chose to conceal. The only sound was the reporters typing. And on millions of screens nationwide, viewers saw a Jamie Raskin no longer the sharp orator, but a man lost in a web of evidence. The atmosphere in the hearing room had barely settled after the bombshell about the emails, but Karoline Leavitt gave her opponent no time to recover. She flicked her hair back, pulled a thick envelope from her file, and slammed it onto the table, the sharp sound startling several people. Speaking slowly, each word like a hammer strike, she said, if the emails and deleted data weren't convincing enough for Mr. Raskin, perhaps these numbers will speak the truth. I present financial records directly tied to Mr. Raskin's office and campaign. Small movement from Raskin caught the cameras. He leaned slightly forward, hands clasped tightly, as if bracing for another blow. Leavitt opened the envelope, pulled out a stack of large printed sheets, and turned them toward the screen for the technician to project. A bank statement appeared, dense with transaction lines, amounts large and small meticulously detailed. Most striking were the regular payments from a well-known Washington lobbying group, totaling over $300,000 in just 6 months, perfectly aligning with the period when the January 6th committee was holding its most contentious hearings. Murmurs filled the room again. Some congressmen leaned close to whisper. A few reporters gaped, their fingers typing non-stop. Leavitt needed no dramatic flair, simply flipping through the statement pages. Her voice calm. Members of the committee, This is evidence that Mr. Raskin's office received direct funding from the lobbying organization Justice for All PAC, which has close ties to senior Democrats. Notably, these payments spiked precisely when the committee decided to exclude evidence favorable to former President Trump. Jamie Raskin stood abruptly, his voice trembling, forcing each word. Those are legal contributions. I've publicly reported them in my campaign finance disclosures. There's nothing unusual here. He waved at the statement, as if to dismiss the weight of the numbers. Every congressman here receives funding. It's part of the system. You can't turn a legal process into evidence of wrongdoing. Leavitt turned fully to face him, her gaze icy. Legal doesn't mean clean, sir. The American people don't just care whether you violated a technical rule. They want to know if the committee's decisions, your decisions, were swayed by hundreds of thousands of dollars from interest groups. And when that money appears exactly when evidence disappears, do you think they'll believe it's a coincidence? The room froze for a moment. Raskin tried to regain composure, lowering his voice, but the tremble was clear. You're fabricating a story. That PAC supports many congressmen, not just me. I've never let money influence my work. Leavitt clicked to the next slide, revealing another document, an internal memo from Justice for All PAC, stating clearly, the January 6th committee is on the right track. Continue supporting JR to ensure a favorable final conclusion. She held up the copy for the cameras, her voice firm. You can deny it, but those paying you spelled out their goals clearly, and the payments in the bank statement matched this memo's commitment perfectly. An ooh rippled through the room. Some Republican congressmen tapped their desks lightly, a few chuckling sardonically. Raskin paled, shouting, almost breaking. I had no knowledge of that document. I've never taken orders from any PAC. This is a desperate attempt to smear me. Leavitt's expression didn't change. She tapped her fingers on the table, then asked sharply, her voice like steel. If you had no knowledge, why did the money flow into your account at that exact time? And why did your email, which we just saw, say stay focused? Don't let this leak. The American people don't need to be investigators to see the truth. Money, power, and bias are tightly intertwined. The room buzzed, the tension palpable in every heartbeat. Raskin shook his head repeatedly, hands gripping as if clinging to control. But the cold numbers on the bank statement, paired with Leavitt's piercing accusations, pinned him firmly on the defensive. All committee members spoke up, voice grave. We need a recess to review this evidence. But Leavitt cut in, not allowing a pause. No, the American people deserve to hear Mr. Raskin answer right here, right now. You received hundreds of thousands from an organization with a direct stake in the committee's outcome. Do you dare deny that money didn't influence your decisions? Raskin opened his mouth, managing only a feint. He looked around for support, but many allies stayed silent, avoiding his gaze. The silence was heavier than any accusation, exposing that even his own side struggled to defend him. Leavitt pressed forward, her voice relentless. Remember, the American people don't just want to hear you say legal. They want to know if you're still clean enough to represent justice. And the answer, Mr. Raskin, lies right there in that bank statement. In that moment, America, via live broadcast, saw the stark contrast. A young, bold Leavitt, confident as steel, and a Jamie Raskin reeling in a storm of financial evidence, his trembling voice clinging to the word legal, but knowing deep down that argument had lost its weight. The murmurs still echoed after the financial records blow when Karoline Leavitt swiftly shifted to an even sharper strike. She reached into an unused file, pulling out a red hardback folder stamped confidential. Placing it on the table, she said firmly, if you think the funding was just a coincidence, this will silence everyone. A classified report, approved with Jamie Raskin's signature. The room held its breath. Leavitt opened the folder, holding up the first page for the cameras to zoom in. The document stated clearly, set aside evidence provided by witness X. Content may undermine the investigation's direction, not to be included in the official report. Below was a familiar slanted signature, identical to countless others Raskin had used. The room erupted, congressmen leaning forward, some covering their mouths. Reporters snapped photos, keyboards clacking furiously. Raskin's face paled. He stood abruptly, pointing at the document, shouting, I never signed that. This is a forgery, a blatant setup. Leavitt remained calm. She flipped to the next page, revealing a signature analysis by an expert agency. The large screen displayed two images, the confidential document's signature and Raskin's official congressional signature. The curves, slants, and pen pressure matched perfectly. Mr. Raskin, Leavitt said, her voice steady but steely. This is the signature analysis by an independent expert team. It confirms the signature on the classified report matches yours with 97% certainty. Do you still wish to deny it? The room shook. Some let out short, bitter laughs. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Cameras zoomed on Raskin's face. His eyes blinked rapidly, hands gripping the mic until they whitened. The analysis. It could be wrong. I didn't sign. I've never seen this report. He stammered, his usual poise gone. Leavitt delivered the final blow. If you've never seen it, explain why the document's metadata shows it was created on your office's server under your admin account. And why does the signature match thousands of your congressional signatures? The air grew stifling. Raskin shook his head repeatedly, eyes darting, seeking support but finding only heavy stares from colleagues. A few Democrats looked down, avoiding the cameras. Leavitt set the folder down, hands clasped, and said slowly, "The American people are watching live. They see the signature, the analysis, and your reaction. I don't need to shout because the evidence speaks." The silence that followed was crushing, broken only by the camera's clicks. In that moment, America saw Jamie Raskin, for the first time, completely halted, his denials choked by a cold forensic report. The room was still reeling from the classified report and signature analysis when Karoline Leavitt shifted to a new, even more powerful blow, making the already tense atmosphere suffocating. She didn't hesitate, giving her opponent no chance to breathe. From her file, she pulled a neatly clipped stack of papers, each page numbered clearly. Raising the stack, her voice boomed through the mic. "If you think the signature and analysis can still be denied by Mr. Raskin, listen to this. This is the transcript of a private call between Mr. Raskin and a close aide. The content was legally recorded by a witness present, and I have both the transcript and the original audio file." The large screen lit up, text appearing clearly. Leavitt read slowly, emphasizing each word. "Raskin, we need to ensure this investigation ends the right way. Don't let unfavorable details dilute the main story." Aide, "Understood, sir. What about those documents?" Raskin, "Handle them cleanly. Don't let them complicate things." The room's sound seemed to vanish. No one moved, all eyes glued to the screen, listening to Leavitt's voice echo. Some reporters gaped, typing frantically. Others raised phones to record the screen. Instantly, Jamie Raskin roared, breaking the silence. "That call was edited. This isn't the full conversation. You've taken snippets and stitched them together to frame me. This is blatant slander." He slammed the table, the mic screeching, his face flushed with rage, eyes darting angrily, seeking allies. But no one spoke up. Leavitt didn't flinch, her lips curving into a half-smile. She raised another USB, saying slowly, "If you claim this transcript was edited, I invite you and all of America to hear the original audio, unedited, unprocessed, just the raw sound of your call." The technician pressed a button, the speakers crackled briefly, then a familiar voice rang out, unmistakable. "We need to ensure this investigation ends the right way. Don't let unfavorable details dilute the main story." Jamie Raskin's voice, low but clear. Then the aide, "Understood, sir. What about those documents?" And Raskin again, undeniable, "Handle them cleanly. Don't let them complicate things." The sound echoed through the room, a sharp blade slicing through any defense. As the audio stopped, the silence was so heavy, you could hear Raskin's ragged breaths. Cameras zoomed on his face, eyes wide, lips tight, hands trembling on the table's edge. He shook his head repeatedly, muttering, "No, no, this is a trap, a trap." Leavitt stepped forward, her gaze pinning her opponent like a blade. "Mr. Raskin, the American people just heard your voice. This isn't a signature you can deny or a document you can call forged. This is your voice, recorded in full. What do you have left to dispute?" A few Republicans behind tapped their desks like applause, while many Democrats looked down, avoiding cameras. The divide was clear in the room, centered on the words just played from Jamie Raskin's own voice. Raskin shouted, his voice breaking, "That call lacks context. I said, handle cleanly about administrative issues, not hiding evidence. You're deliberately twisting my words." Leavitt didn't let him stretch it further. She clicked, the screen showing the audio file's metadata, date, time, phone number, call location, all matched Raskin's office perfectly. "The context you mentioned might explain," Leavitt said coldly, But technical data doesn't lie. This is your voice, your time, your phone number, and the words are clear. We need to ensure this investigation ends the right way. The American people heard it, and they know what you meant. Murmurs rolled through the room like waves. Camera flashes flared. Pens raced. In that moment, Jamie Raskin, the renowned, sharp, unbeatable orator, became a man cornered, clinging to scattered defenses. Leavitt lowered her voice, each word a tolling bell. Stop making excuses. The original audio is undeniable. And the truth is, you deliberately steered a national investigation to favor your side. You can't hide anymore. America, through the broadcast, witnessed that moment when evidence wasn't just documents or signatures, but Jamie Raskin's own voice, ringing clear, raw, exposing the truth he desperately sought to conceal. As the original audio's final sound faded, the hearing room remained frozen. Tense stares, reporters' trembling fingers hovering over keyboards. No one dared break the heavy silence. Raskin, face flushed, eyes red, knew he was pushed to the edge. Instead of defending with increasingly weak arguments, he suddenly launched a different tactic, a personal attack. He stood tall, the mic vibrating with his booming voice. This is a farce. Everything we've seen today is a staged political drama. And you, Karoline Leavitt, are just an inexperienced pawn, propped up by your side to destroy me. You've never led, never borne national responsibility. You don't have the standing to stand here, accusing someone who's dedicated a lifetime to the Constitution and this democracy. His words echoed sharply, as if to tear through the pressure surrounding him. Some Democrats behind clapped lightly, a few nodding, hoping this personal attack would regain ground. But the room fell silent, as Karoline Leavitt's lips curved into an unshaken smile. She stood slowly, letting the tense silence build drama for her words. Her eyes swept the room, then locked on her opponent. You say I lack experience? You may be right. I don't have decades in Congress. I don't have experience wearing a suit, giving long speeches to hide inconvenient truths. And I certainly don't have experience turning power into a weapon to suppress unfavorable evidence. If that's experience, it's not what I aspire to. The room erupted. A wave of oohs rolled through. Some congressmen stifling sardonic laughs, reporters typing frantically. Leavitt's razor-sharp retort not only sliced through Raskin's attack, but instantly put him back on the defensive. Raskin's voice rose, eyes blazing. You dare belittle my career. I've stood against tyranny, defended this democracy in its darkest hours. And you've barely stepped into politics. You know nothing of leadership's pressures. Leavitt tilted her head, her voice low but clear, each word piercing. Leadership's pressures aren't an excuse to twist the truth. I may lack experience, but I know the basics. Justice isn't bought with money or bent by power. But you, Mr. Raskin, perhaps your experience taught you to wield truth as a weapon. And that's the real tragedy. The room exploded. Scattered applause broke out, despite the chair's calls for order. Cameras zoomed on Raskin's face, teeth clenched, hands gripping the mic, body trembling with rage. He shouted, "You're just a tool. They're using you like a cheap dagger to stab me and those daring to defend this democracy. One day, they'll discard you like they've discarded countless others." Leavitt didn't blink. She stepped forward, hands resting lightly on the table, her voice steady through the mic. Maybe I'll be discarded, attacked, even destroyed, but I'll never be the one exposed for burying the truth. And that's the biggest difference between you and me, Mr. Raskin. The room erupted again, a tidal wave of sound. Cheers, murmurs, keyboards clacking like rain. The tension peaked, the two figures facing off, no longer veiled, no more circling. Each word was a sharp blade, aimed at the other's credibility and resolve. The committee chair banged the gavel repeatedly, but couldn't quell the uproar. Cameras captured the scene, a shouting, uncontrolled Raskin, and a calm, icy Leavitt, her every word, a weapon making her opponent tremble. In that moment, millions watching realized the battle was no longer about documents, signatures, or bank statements. It was a raw psychological showdown, where credibility and resolve were laid bare, where each word was a dagger, and the first to falter would lose. And in that moment, all saw clearly, Jamie Raskin, for the first time in his career, let anger overtake him, while Karoline Leavitt coldly turned that anger into vivid proof of his loss of control. The room was still reeling from the fiery personal exchange when Karoline Leavitt twisted the knife into a more critical weak spot. She knew that with her opponent caught in emotion, it was the perfect moment to present undeniable evidence. Without another word, she pulled a clear plastic sleeve from her file, containing a paper check, its signature clear to every stroke. She held it high, camera lights glinting off the green ink on the paper. Her voice boomed, each word deliberate. "This is a personal check, signed by Jamie Raskin himself, for $50,000, paid to a company called Capital Research Strategies. This firm is known as an organization specializing in opposition research. Plainly put, digging up dirt on political rivals." An immediate uproar erupted. Reporters raised cameras, snapping furiously, while some congressmen leaned forward, as if unable to believe what they'd just heard. Raskin stood frozen, his face suddenly ashen, his entire body rigid as if drained of blood. His lips moved, but no words came, his eyes fixed on the check in Leavitt's hand. Leavitt didn't miss her chance. She displayed an enlarged copy of the check on the large screen. Every detail was clear. The payee, Capital Research Strategies, the account number, the date, and most crucially, the familiar slanted signature, Jamie Raskin's. "This is not a forgery, not a baseless photocopy," Leavitt continued. "This is the original, verified by the bank. It proves that you paid from your personal account to hire people to investigate your own colleagues on this committee." The room's silence shattered. Some Republican committee members tapped their desks in approval, while Democrats shook their heads, faces pale. The chair frowned, banging the gavel for order, but the murmurs only grew louder. Raskin swallowed hard, his voice breaking. I don't know. It could be a different payment. I don't recall signing that check." Leavitt cut in, not letting him drag it out. "You don't recall? Sir, this is your account at First Federal Bank, your signature, a date matching the exact period of the committee's hearings. And coincidentally, during that same period, a series of rumors targeting other committee members appeared in the press, only to vanish quickly without a trace. The American people aren't fools. They see the full picture." Chairs scraped loudly. Reporters rushed to the doors, calling in breaking news. Raskin lunged forward, trembling hands pointing at the screen. "This is a fabrication. I never hired anyone to dig dirt on colleagues. This could be a setup to destroy me." Leavitt's face remained icy. She signaled the technician to open the next file, a service contract from Capital Research Strategies, clearly stating the request to search and compile information potentially damaging to congressional members of the committee, and the client, Jamie Raskin. "Members of the committee," Leavitt said, her voice urgent but controlled. "Mr. Raskin didn't just receive money from lobbying groups or hide evidence. He used personal funds to hire people to attack his own colleagues. He turned the investigative committee into a tool for personal politics." A wave of outrage surged through the room. Some Democrats sank into their chairs, avoiding the cameras. Many Republicans began pounding their desks, demanding Raskin respond. He tried to shout, but his voice choked. I can't." Then he collapsed into his seat, hands covering his face. The room fell silent for a few seconds, as no one had ever seen Jamie Raskin, the confident orator who could speak for hours, so powerless, mute, before such tangible evidence. Leavitt looked directly into the camera, her voice low but weighty. "One check can say more than 1,000 speeches. It doesn't lie. And today, the American people have seen your signature, your money, and your true intentions." In that moment, Raskin's denials dissolved, his face pale, lips trembling, unable to form words. On live broadcast, millions of Americans saw it, a Jamie Raskin, ashen, silent, unable to recover, while Karoline Leavitt, check in hand, stood tall as the one commanding the stage. The room remained stifling after the shocking check was revealed, but Karoline Leavitt shifted to another file. The brief calm was fleeting. Everyone knew she had more to unveil. With deliberate slowness, she pulled out a stack of papers stamped sworn affidavit, holding it high for the lights and cameras to capture clearly. "Members of the committee, this is a sworn statement from an unexpected source, an aide who stood by Mr. Raskin's side for years, his right-hand man in major investigations and hearings. He has chosen to break his silence." The room buzzed. Reporters leaned forward. Some congressmen furrowed their brows, a few whispering, "No way." Leavitt opened the document, scanning the lines before reading slowly, her voice even and cold. "My, as an aide to Congressman Jamie Raskin, swear that in multiple internal meetings, Mr. Raskin directly pressured staff to edit or even remove report sections that could derail the narrative he wanted. When one staffer objected, Mr. Raskin replied, "This isn't about objective truth. This is a political story, and we must control it." The words landed like a hammer blow to Raskin's already fractured credibility. Whispers grew frantic. Cameras flashed relentlessly. The large screen displayed a scan of the affidavit, complete with the aide's signature. Jamie Raskin, now pale, stood trembling, hands gripping the table, his eyes red. His voice broke with anger and despair. "This is betrayal. That man, he was my trusted ally, someone I relied on completely. And now, for dirty political motives, he turns on me, fabricating lies." He slammed his hand on the table, voice choking, then suddenly burst into tears, sobbing as he shouted, "I fought my whole life for truth, for justice, and now my closest ally stabs me in the back. This is blatant betrayal." The room erupted at the unprecedented sight. Jamie Raskin, the tough politician and renowned legal scholar, crying on live television. But instead of eliciting sympathy, his tears exposed his vulnerability. Cameras zoomed in on his tear-streaked face, while Leavitt stood firm, her gaze icy. She spoke, voice sharp as steel. "Mr. Raskin, you may call this betrayal, but if it's true, then this betrayal was necessary. Americans don't need curated stories. They need the unfiltered truth, undistorted by anyone, even a congressman with a storied reputation. And today, that truth was laid bare by your closest ally." The room reeled. Raskin slumped, shoulders shaking, muttering disjointed words. In contrast, Leavitt simply placed the affidavit on the table, letting it sit like a living testament, needing no embellishment. The moment he broke down in angry tears was enough for America to see. Jamie Raskin's final defenses were crumbling. The room was still reeling from Raskin's furious tears when Karoline Leavitt pressed on, knowing that when an opponent is emotionally broken, it's time for the fatal strike. With a calm, almost cold demeanor, she pulled a thick file from a dark green hardback folder, stamped in red with internal report, restricted. The sound of it hitting the table was sharp, silencing every murmur in the room. Leavitt looked directly at her opponent, her voice commanding, "If you think what's been presented is the full extent of the truth, think again. This is an internal report, never made public, buried for years. It details at least 7 major cases, suppressed under the direct orders of Jamie Raskin." A shockwave hit instantly. Congressmen sat up. Reporters scrambled for cameras. Leavitt opened the file, flipping to the first page. Bold text read, "Case 01, Witness A, contradictory evidence removed." She continued, each word icy. "The report states this case was closed, after orders from senior leadership, despite the investigative team recommending further pursuit. Reason, not aligned with the narrative." Raskin stood trembling, his voice hoarse. "That's not true. I've never seen that report. It's fabricated. I never approved such decisions." Leavitt didn't respond immediately, flipping through more pages. Case 03, evidence contradicting Democratic witness testimony, removed. Case 05, security camera video footage, not submitted to the record. Case 07, police officer testimony, indefinitely shelved. Each line she read fueled the room's growing noise, like relentless waves. Raskin gripped the mic, shouting desperately, "I've never seen them. I didn't know about any of those cases. This is a setup to destroy me." He turned to his allies, seeking protection, but many Democrats averted their eyes, looking down. Leavitt tilted her head, then slowly turned to the final page. A prominent signature stood out. "Approved, J. Raskin." She held the file up for the room to see, camera lights catching every stroke. Her voice was steely. "You say you've never seen this report. Then whose signature is this at the bottom, sir?" The room exploded. Some Republicans couldn't hold back, pounding their desks. Small cheers rising from the back. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted to colleagues to relay breaking news. Raskin, ghostly pale, lips trembling, shouted, "No, impossible. It's a forgery. That signature. It's not mine. You've set me up." He clutched his head, eyes darting, as if searching for an escape in the surrounding maze. Leavitt didn't blink, pulling a thin set of papers from the file's end. "This is a signature analysis conducted 3 days ago by an independent congressional forensic lab. Result 96% match with your official congressional signatures. The American people don't need my words anymore. They've seen it with their eyes and now have forensic confirmation. The room quaked with political shock. Some Democrats whispered, "My God, if this is real, it's over." Reporters shouted questions, but the chair banged the gavel repeatedly, his voice trembling with tension. "Order. Everyone. Order." Amid the chaos, Leavitt slowly set the file down, tapping it 3 times, then looked directly at Raskin. "You can deny everything, but your signature, the server metadata, and this internal report exposed the truth. At least 7 cases were buried to protect the narrative you wanted. The American people have seen today how justice was distorted." Raskin staggered back into his seat, hands clutching his head, eyes red, breathing heavily. He shook his head frantically, muttering, I never. But his trembling voice was swallowed by the clacking keyboards, snapping cameras, and the storm-like murmurs raging in the room. In that moment, 2 figures stood in stark contrast. A trembling, broken Jamie Raskin, ensnared by evidence, and a cold, unyielding Karoline Leavitt, wielding the sword of justice. Millions of Americans watching live knew the fight had gone too far to be reversed. The hearing room was so chaotic, it seemed it couldn't hold more tension. But Karoline Leavitt had one final move, turning scattered evidence into a comprehensive indictment. She knew the public didn't just want documents or numbers. They wanted the full picture. So, she began arranging the files before her in a neat row, then looked up, her voice resonant and sharp, like a prosecutor in a historic trial. "Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, American people watching live, we've gone through layers of evidence. I ask permission, right here, to tie it all into one story. A story of abused power, distorted justice, and a congressman who put political gain above truth." She raised the first file, the internal memo. First, we have the memo, clearly stating, select only evidence unfavorable to Republicans. A direct order, with Jamie Raskin's signature at the bottom. Murmurs rose, but Leavitt quickly set it down and picked up the next. "Next," she said, voice steady and firm. "Leaked emails show Raskin's staff discussing how to protect certain Democrats at all costs. And coincidentally, critical evidence vanished from the server right after. System logs confirm Raskin's admin account performed the deletion. You can't call that a coincidence." She set the emails down, pulling up the former aide's affidavit. A witness, who worked directly under him, swore he was ordered to delete data, but had the courage to keep a copy. Today, that data surfaced, confirming what he tried to deny. The room shook. Cameras zoomed on Raskin's face. He sat slumped, staring into space, as if deaf to the world. Leavitt continued, lifting the bank statement, then the financial records. Hundreds of thousands of dollars from Justice for All PAC flowed into his account, perfectly timed with the committee's exclusion of evidence favoring former President Trump. He calls it legal, but legal never means clean. She didn't let the room breathe, raising the check. "And here, ladies and gentlemen, a personal check for $50,000, signed by Raskin, paid to a firm researching opponents. The purpose? Digging dirt on his own committee colleagues. No longer just hiding truth, but actively attacking those who dared differ." A roar erupted, but Leavitt pressed on, her voice hammering. "We have the affidavit of a close aide, who stood by him, confirming he pressured staff to alter reports to fit his political narrative. When refused, he called it a story, not objective truth." Raskin shuddered, hands gripping the table, but no rebuttal came. Leavitt placed all the files back in a neat row, standing tall, her voice ringing like a final bell. "Every piece of evidence, memo, emails, affidavit, bank statement, check, internal report of 7 buried cases, points to one thing. Jamie Raskin abused his power. He used his congressional seat and committee influence to bend justice, hide truth, and manipulate the investigation's outcome for political ends." The room fell silent. No keyboards, no whispers. Dozens of cameras zoomed on the 2 figures. Leavitt unyielding, resolute. Raskin slumped, eyes red, face pale. The committee chair started to speak, but stopped, feeling the weight of truth crashing down. Leavitt lowered her voice, but the mic carried it nationwide. "The American people don't need me to say more. They've seen the evidence with their eyes, heard your voice with their ears, and watched your reactions throughout this hearing. They know the truth, and the truth is, justice was betrayed, not by some faceless force, but by the very person tasked with protecting it." A long, heavy silence followed, like a curtain falling. Raskin sat motionless, hands trembling, lips moving but silent. No arguments held, no escape remained. His empty, desperate image said it all. In that moment, the room and millions watching knew the fight was over. Jamie Raskin had lost, not in a debate, but in a battle with the truth itself. The room remained silent. After Karoline Leavitt's prosecutorial summation, the files, memo, emails, affidavit, bank statement, check, report of 7 buried cases, formed an unyielding wall of evidence around Jamie Raskin. He sat frozen for a long moment, hands clutching the table's edge, eyes fixed on the polished wood floor. Cameras zoomed in, reporters waiting for a response. But there was nothing left. The tension had reached its peak. Suddenly, Raskin shot up. His chair toppled backward, crashing with a jarring sound that startled the room. His face flushed, eyes blazing with rage, veins bulging on his forehead. He gripped the mic, shouting, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. "This is a farce, a stage drama to smear me and destroy what I've dedicated my life to. I won't participate in this for another minute." His words reverberated, broadcast to millions of screens. Reporters gaped, keyboards stilled. Congressmen leaned back, a rare sight. Jamie Raskin, the sharp legal scholar and orator who'd bested countless opponents, now screaming in desperation. Without waiting, he shoved the mic aside, the metal clanging sharply, and turned. His heavy, rapid footsteps echoed on the wood, each one like a final stamp on the hearing. "I won't stay another second. This is an insult. This isn't Congress. This is a dirty political arena," he shouted, voice breaking, trembling. Cameras followed. The live feed showed Jamie Raskin storming out, pushing past a staffer, trying to intervene. The heavy door swinging open with a piercing creak. He left, leaving behind a stunned room. The room erupted in chaos. Some Republicans smiled in disbelief, a few even clapping, while many Democrats looked down, silent. Reporters rushed out to call in breaking news. The chair banged the gavel repeatedly, but the uproar swelled like a tidal wave. Amid the storm, Karoline Leavitt sat still. She didn't smile, clap, or speak. Her eyes, cold and sharp, fixed on the path Raskin had taken, as if etching his exit into the memory of millions. Her hands slowly closed the file, arranging it neatly, each movement calm and chilling. The cameras panned to her face. The lights reflected off her piercing, razor-sharp eyes. While Raskin had stormed out, leaving an image of desperation, Leavitt became the embodiment of steely calm. She needed no more words. America had seen enough. In that moment, the stark contrast was undeniable. A Raskin out of control, shouting and fleeing. A Leavitt cold, silent yet towering, like the one holding the scales of power. The entire room seemed to etch it into collective memory. The showdown was over, and the image of the loser was clear. The door slammed shut behind Jamie Raskin, the metallic echo lingering in the vast room. All that remained was a heavy silence, like thick dust settling over the rows of seats, the microphones, the glaring lights. No one on the committee spoke immediately. The congressman, usually loud with arguments, sat motionless, eyes fixed on the polished wooden table, hands clasped tightly. That silence was more haunting than Raskin's screams as he stormed out. A few reporters in the back hesitantly lowered their cameras, as if realizing the most dramatic moment had passed, giving way to an indescribable aftershock. The chair's gavel lay still, no longer struck, as even he knew things had spiraled beyond procedural control. The room held its breath, still haunted by the contrasting images. A seasoned congressman trembling and shouting as he fled. A young figure calmly gathering documents, as if it were just another workday. Karoline Leavitt sat quietly, her eyes still fixed on the door where Raskin had vanished. She didn't smile or revel in triumph. All she did was neatly stack her files, clipping them into orderly piles. Her fingers lightly brushed the red hardback folder stamped confidential, then placed it at the bottom. The rustle of paper was crisp in the deathly silent room. Other congressmen glanced at her, but said nothing. Some bowed their heads, others tapped pens on the table, but there were no rebuttals, no defenses. It was as if they, too, grasped that what had unfolded had cracked the room open, a fracture no apologies could mend. Leavitt took a breath, then leaned slightly toward the microphone. Her voice rang out, not loud, not rushed, just enough to fill the room and reach every lens. The truth doesn't need defending. It stands on its own. The brief statement landed like a bell's toll. Not an attack, not gloating, just a simple assertion. yet it reverberated, touching everyone present. For a split second, many felt a chill, knowing those words would define not just this hearing but the memory of millions watching live. Leavitt closed the final file, tucked it into her leather bag, and stood. Her chair slid back with a soft scrape in the silence. She didn't look around or seek approval, only turned and walked slowly from her spot. Each step echoed firmly, a stark contrast to Raskin's earlier furious stomping. In the eyes of reporters, in the camera lenses, the contrast was chillingly clear on one side, the memory of Jamie Raskin storming out, face ashen, shouting, "This is a farce. I won't stay another second." On the other, Karoline Leavitt, calm eyes icy, quietly gathering her files and leaving with a defining statement. The room fell silent. No more questions, no defenses. Everything had been said, and everything had been witnessed. The congressman sat quietly, shoulders slumped, as if realizing a new milestone had been set before their eyes. The chair finally tapped the gavel lightly, his voice hoarse. The hearing is temporarily adjourned. But no one cared about procedure anymore. The true end had come the moment Raskin fled, leaving his career and reputation behind. Leavitt walked through the rows, not looking back. She knew today's image would outlast any article, echo beyond any broadcast. It was the image of a brutal contrast, one side collapsing in rage, the other prevailing with calm truth. That contrast became a symbol, etched into America's memory. Outside, her heels clicked steadily on the granite floor, echoing with certainty. Behind her, the room remained steeped in heavy silence, where congressmen lingered in their seats, the air thick with the aftermath of an unrelenting showdown. The battle had ended, but its echoes lingered. And in that moment, all knew a new chapter of history had been written by the truth laid bare in that room. The Leavitt-Raskin saga exposed a lesson for American democracy. Power only matters under strict scrutiny. From the opening question, "Do you deny signing this document?" the decorum shattered, forcing the truth forward. A memo demanding only select evidence unfavorable to Republicans. From there, a relentless chain of technical details followed. Emails with timestamps matching the day evidence vanished. A staffer's testimony of being ordered to delete data, but keeping a copy, and a USB with metadata, proving the deletion came from Raskin's office admin account. When bank statements revealed hundreds of thousands from Justice for All PAC flowing in during the hearings, Leavitt sealed it with "legal doesn't mean clean." Then came the confidential report with a verified signature match, a transcript, an original audio of Raskin's voice saying, "We need to ensure this investigation ends the right way. Handle it cleanly." It was tied together by a $50,000 personal check to Capital Research Strategies, a close aide's affidavit, and a report of 7 buried cases, forming a complete indictment. The emotional peak exploded when Raskin shouted, "This is a farce. I won't stay another second," and stormed out, in stark contrast to Leavitt's calm, leaving her final words, "The truth doesn't need defending. It stands on its own." The lesson for citizens: trust facts over bias, demand transparency in funding, system logs, and independent audits. The lesson for leaders: avoid conflicts of interest. Don't shape truth. As in the digital age, metadata and digital signatures will expose all for Congress. Strengthen archiving, audit standards, and independent oversight, so every paper trail leads to accountability. Thank you for following this historic showdown. Please subscribe to join us in uncovering truths others want hidden. See you in the next video, where we'll witness more moments shaking America's political landscape.